All right, thank you very much. Tonight, I'd like to call to order for the City Council regular meeting for the City of Xenia. Today is Thursday, April 9th, 2020. And at this time, we are going to have an invocation by our own Vice President, Dr. Wallace, followed by the pledge. I'll be leading the pledge tonight. Dr. Wallace.
I don't see.
Do we have Dr. Wallace with us?
He was here earlier.
Okay, so I'm going to ask that if Councilman Scrivens, if you would like to go ahead and do the invocation tonight.
All right, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Let's look to the Lord in prayer. Father God, once again that you've allowed a few of your faithful servants to gather in your name to do business for your kingdom. Lord God, we ask you for strength and wisdom, and we ask you for understanding as we deliberate. Lord, you know what the situation is. You know what we've been praying for the last 30 days. We ask you now to show your hand, and show your hand to be bold and mighty, Lord. So we know that you can do it, and we're just thankful, and we just can't wait to see you do it, Lord. So in his name we pray, and everyone would say, amen.
Thank you, Councilman Scrivens. I have the American flag here. If you'd like to stand, you're welcome to. We'll probably lose you in your view, though, if you're with your camera angle. So I'm going to go ahead and lead us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Even me. All right.
Thank you very much, Councilman Scrivens. At this time, I'm going to ask our finance director to do a roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace. Councilman Scrivens.
Present.
Councilwoman Dean.
Here.
Councilman Branham.
Here.
Councilman Dean.
Here.
Mayor Mays.
Here.
President Smith.
Present. Thank you very much. We'll just continue to try to get a hold of Vice President Wallace. Next on our agenda is the approval of minutes from our March 26, 2020 regular meeting. Could I accept a motion to accept the minutes, please?
So move.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Scrivens. And do I have a second, please?
Second it.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Rebecca.
Okay. Seconded by Councilwoman Dean. Any comments or questions regarding our minutes from our last meeting? Seeing none, roll call to accept the minutes, please.
Councilman Scrivens.
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean.
Aye.
Councilman Branham.
Aye.
Councilman Dean.
Aye.
Mayor Mays.
Aye.
President Smith.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. We have no special presentations for tonight or audience comments. We'll go back to that in just a little bit. We have no old business for tonight and no public hearings. Our first order of new business is Ordinance 2020-08, amending Ordinance 2020-07 to provide appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the City of Xenia, Ohio for fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Finance Director.
Thank you, Council President. Real quick before I get started on that, are you with us now, Councilman Wallace?
I am.
And did you want to approve those minutes for 326?
Actually, I abstain. That was absent 326.
All right. All right. The appropriations ordinance that we have before you this evening is related to a grant that the probation office has been able to acquire. This grant allows them to service some of their clients without face-to-face interactions. I think it's a kiosk type of technology, and so they've been awarded that grant. We're going to receive the revenue, but we don't have the money appropriated in order to move forward with that grant. So we're requesting tonight appropriation of $23,300 into Fund 214, our probation fund, to facilitate that grant.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Finance Director. Do we have a motion to approve the ordinance as an emergency?
Absolutely, that's an emergency.
Thank you. I have a motion by the mayor to move as an emergency. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Nobody speaking up.
Thank you. Thank you. Second by Councilman Scrivens. Any comments, questions, or concerns regarding this motion? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace?
I think he's frozen again.
Yeah, he's out.
All right. Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Our next item is Administration Motion B, awarding the bid and authorizing city manager to execute a contract with Matrix 5 LLC for the Innovation Drive Extension Project. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Pursuant to the development agreement executed with the Greene County Career Center, the second phase in infrastructure installation at the Career Center project site includes the extension of Innovation Drive roadway connecting Union Road and US 68. The project benefits both the Greene Regional Business Park as well as the Career Center, providing the much needed accessibility to these locations, promoting their full build out. The city solicited bids for this project, and on March 24th received a total of 9 bids. These bids were received by our staff in a sort of unique bid opening, but we were very pleased to see that we got very competitive bids that came in substantially below the engineer's estimate. The lowest and best bid was from Matrix 5 LLC at a cost of $1,147,044.20. Our engineering staff has vetted the firm with reference checks, and based on the feedback from these references and the lowest bid quoted, we believe that Matrix 5 should be awarded the bid. So this evening, we are recommending that council award the bid for the Innovation Drive Extension Project, authorize the execution of the contract with Matrix 5 LLC to complete the project, again, at the not to exceed prices quoted previously.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a motion to award the bid?
So moved.
So moved by Councilman Dean. Thank you very much. Do we have a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Councilwoman Dean. Any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the award of this bid? All right, seeing none, Mr. Finance Director.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Yes, aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Sorry, lost some audio there. Our next item is Administration Motion C, authorizing city manager to execute work order number 2020-01 with Quantum Network Integrators LLC for fiber installation services under the existing master services agreement. Mr. Finance Director.
Council President, this fiber project is something we've talked about with council on several occasions. This particular project is intended to connect the Spring Hill Water Tower, OVC's lift station, Greene Regional Business Park, the Ford Road wastewater treatment plant, and it provides a direct connection to Mavecca to be our primary internet service provider. We've already completed several runs related to this that were approved by a work order approved by council late last year. This is the second phase of that. We had to acquire some easements in order to do some of this work from the county, from AIA, from Legacy Christian, and then also get some permits from the county for some of the work in the township. We've gotten approval on those easements, and we're working through a lot of those permitting issues, and we're ready to move forward with some of these other portions of the project. And so we're requesting tonight council approve that work order for $224,314.85. Frankly, without this portion of the approval, some of the work that's already done would be irrelevant and not functional. So some of the work connecting the Career Center, Fiber Run on Innovation Way, those are complete, and there's a good bit of the project complete from the city facility out to the Green Regional Business Park. We're also, as a part of this, connecting out to Hawkins Road as part of this phase, and that connects us directly to Mavecca. We're in the middle of finalizing a deal with Mavecca for basically a 10-year period where we could lease fiber from them, they could lease fiber from us, and they would be our primary service provider. And we'd have a price that's fixed for up to 10 gigs at $500 per gig. Right now we're paying $1,500 per gig per month. So that's a significant savings. It also allows us to expand the partners that we're providing internet services to. Athletes in Action is going to be a customer of the city, and they have committed to 1 gig that they'd like to purchase from the city every month, which is substantial and helps to recover a good bit of this cost. So this really positions the city well. Obviously, as we're doing this meeting online, I think a lot of the things that have happened here over the last month really is evidence as how important it is to have adequate internet connection and services across our community, and this helps to facilitate that. So we're requesting another $224,314.85 be approved tonight in this work order. There's still another $100,000 portion of this project, totaling $468,464.31 is the final estimate to connect all these assets, and we'll bring that to council later this year as we finish up this part of the project. So we're requesting approval this evening to proceed.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to authorize the work order?
President, given that my in and out status is due to an unstable internet connection, I would move the approval.
All right, thank you very much. I have a motion by Vice President Wallace. Do we have a second?
He's spending money. I might as well co-sign it.
All right, thank you very much. We have a second by Councilman Scrivens. Any comments, questions regarding this work order with Quantum Network Integrators?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
Mr. City Manager, does this include the North Patton Street installation or the West 2nd Street installation?
I'll defer to the finance director, but I don't believe those are included in this particular extension.
Yeah, so the West 2nd Street connection to the water tower is complete. That's already active and paid for. What was the first connection that you had inquired about? The
North Patton Street.
North Patton? This does not include North Patton. We do have another project that we had slated for later this year to connect North Patton, which would get us into our other industrial park. And we do have some users over in that park who've talked to us about potentially using the city for high-speed connection. To be frank, with a lot of the things that are happening here throughout the city and some of the financial implications, we'll come back and revisit that with council to see if they would want to proceed with those connections as well. The improvements that we are requesting today are funded primarily out of water and sewer. There's a small portion that wasn't. The county grant was used to fill a lot of that gap. And then connection of the water tower in the industrial park would again be water and sewer funds. So I think there are dollars available to do that. But this project has been a little more difficult to facilitate than we thought to get some of these easements. Not that it's difficult, it's just time consuming. And so we're not sure if we'll be able to bring that back to council this year to connect that water tower, but it's certainly in the plans for the future. Another major initiative that we want to that we want to proceed with is connecting our water plant out 68 and then continuing that out to Yellow Springs, which would give us a redundant connection and allow us to be quite confident in the reliability of our network aside from Spectrum or any other third-party provider outside of Mavecca. So that's also on the radar. So we've got to prioritize those projects, but the Patton Street is in the queue, and the 2nd Street one is complete.
Very good. And one final question now. What about here at the headquarters and 31 and 32 fire stations? Mr. Finance Director.
Sorry, I couldn't get myself unmuted there for a second. Yeah, both those stations are already connected. Yep. The vast majority of our city sites are connected, with the exception of some of these water and sewer appurtenances that we're trying to connect as a part of this project.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions regarding this work order? All right, seeing none, Mr. Finance Director, roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Our next item is Administrative Motion D, approving the schedule of bills in the amount of $690,284.48. Mr. Finance Director.
Thank you, President Smith. There are two significant expenditures I'll note on the schedule of bills. One is the water and sewer work that's been done out in Innovation Way. I think most of that is complete. I'm not sure the status of the project as a whole, but I think a good bit of that's been done, which is why we're making payment there. And then the other is related to work that's been done at the landfill, some significant mitigation work that's been done out there. So those are the two primary reasons for fairly large schedule bills this week.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a motion to pay the bills tonight?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Mayor Mays. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion, Mr. President.
Thank you, and I have a second by Vice President Wallace. Any other questions, comments, or concerns regarding the scheduled bills for tonight? All right, I'm not seeing any. So, Mr. Finance Director, roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Next, you'll see in the agenda the highlighted portion, Administrative Motion E, authorizing the city manager to execute proposal number 18470 with Buckeye Power Sales Company for the purchase of a generator for the Ford Road wastewater treatment plant. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate council accommodating this last minute item, but it is urgent. As you recall, at the March 26th regular session, council had approved a retroactive contract with the intent that it would go toward an emergency repair service for our backup generator at the Ford Road wastewater treatment plant. The generator serves our Ford Road plant in times of power loss to ensure that the facility has an uninterrupted power supply. As reported to council last week, upon commencing disassembly for repair of the unit by the vendor, they discovered that the generator motor was much worse than anticipated and unfortunately beyond repair. A complete replacement of this 30-year-old piece of equipment is at this point urgently necessary. I have, given that, instructed the Public Service Department to move forward with soliciting a price quotation from Buckeye Power Sales to replace the generator. Their proposal has been provided and came in at $199,828, which I might add is actually quite a bit better than we had feared it might be. Given the urgency for this replacement generator to be functional as soon as possible, and as Section 9.16C of the city's charter authorizes the expenditure of funds in excess of $25,000 without bidding in the case of an emergency, which we believe this to be, staff recommends City Council authorize the purchase under the terms that we have laid out to allow execution of the proposal submitted, which is number 18470 with Buckeye Power Sales for the quoted price.
All right, thank you very much. Before we ask for a motion, I noticed that this is not listed as actual an emergency purchase. Is that correct?
Correct. If it's being invoked, and I would defer to the law director, but it being invoked under this section, we are basically going around the normal procedure given the emergent nature of it.
All right, thank you. So I guess my question, emergency authorization is not necessary tonight?
It's not necessarily an emergency because it's not a resolution or an ordinance.
Got it.
In those cases, you do have to declare an emergency to get around a second reading. I think what Mr. Merriman is explaining is there is a provision in our city charter that allows you to waive any kind of competitive bidding requirement and authorize this type of purchase when the purchase is being made for an emergency. And getting that generator in the plan is, of course, of paramount importance.
Thank you, Madam Law Director. All right, so at this time, I'll ask for a motion to authorize the city manager to execute the purchase. Anyone like to make that motion?
President, I'll make that motion, but I have a question once the motion is on the floor.
All right, thank you very much. We have a motion by Vice President Wallace. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion, but I also have questions too.
Sure, absolutely. That's a second by Councilman Branham. All right, so I'm going to open up the floor first to our first question, and that's going to be from Vice President Wallace.
And the question I have is for the city manager. This is the same item that you had brought to us at the last meeting that I missed, but that we had discussed on the phone about the possible repair of this item, and it was found to not be repairable, right?
Yeah, so essentially the contractor had done as much of an inspection to determine the replacement capability as could be done without completely tearing the unit apart, which of course, they had to do as part of the replacement process. As they got into that, they realized that what they could not see in their initial evaluation was more extensive than they had thought, which, at this point they feel it's beyond repair. Again, this is a 30-year-old unit. We were trying to repair it at a much lower price point to get a few more years in lieu of replacing it. I will point out that we're not being charged that initial amount that was approved at the last meeting, that $55,000 and change. We won't be charged that amount because assuming, we're obviously moving forward with replacement.
Thank you. Vice President Wallace, does that suffice your question?
It does indeed.
Thank you. All right, I'll open the next question up to Councilman Branham.
So Brant, to piggyback on that, what is that cost going to be that we're incurring from the first transaction? Is that rolled into this almost 200 grand, or is that additional down the line?
Yeah, I don't think I was told that we would not be charged that $55,000. And so I'm assuming, Cody, that there's no additional charge for that. I'd have to double check. If they charge us anything, it'll be for a minor amount of that for some of the labor to do some of the teardown. I don't have any number in front of me, but again, I think it'll be inconsequential. I think they didn't take them all that long. They just had to get the exterior coatings off to determine that it was more substantial than they had thought.
So Brent, I did inquire with the city engineer about this because we've got a PO in place that we're planning to close or amend to see how much they thought that they would actually spend on that PO. And $1,800 is what he said that they knew they were into it. They may have a few other smaller charges, but it's somewhere around that $2,000 range, I think is what he was estimating that they'd end up spending. We left $5,000 on the PO just to be safe as a kind of a worst case scenario. But I think it's probably going to be closer to $2,000 from what our city engineer communicated earlier today.
And one other thought I wanted to add too, typically a unit like this has a lead time of weeks, if not months, because these units are typically not available. They are only, you put an order in and they fabricate the unit and then deliver it based on whatever that fabrication time is. A unique circumstance that we find ourselves in right now, a similarly sized unit that's perfectly acceptable for our purposes had been ordered by a private firm, which has been shuttered because of the COVID-19. So they've pushed back the delivery date for that unit. They physically can't install it for that business. They have this available to us right now. So it's a unique, just a blessing really, that we can be able to land this opportunity right now and not have to wait a couple of months for that construction of that unit.
Great. Agreed. Thank you very much. Councilman Branham, did you get your question answered okay?
Yeah, thanks, Brent.
All right. Thank you very much. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to ask or
Mr.
comment
President,
on this? Yes, Councilman Scrivens.
what's the turnaround time, Mr. City Manager, from the time that we authorize this expenditure till we get it up and running? What do you think?
They'll move forward immediately tomorrow. What I've been told is that weather contingent, they have some site prep, so they have to pour a new pad, and they've got some work with that has to be done, so that'll be a little bit contingent on the weather. But we're estimating that with that work, the actual installation and the testing, that around 60 days or so, we'd have it in place and functional.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions? All right, I'm sorry.
All right, Brent, does that mean we'll continue to rent that unit for approximately 2 more months then?
Unfortunately, yeah. And again, I recognize that is a pretty hefty weekly amount that we'd have to foot the bill for. Unfortunately, we really just have no choice. As I mentioned in our last meeting, pursuant to our license with EPA, we do have to be able to ensure that the plant has electric capabilities. We do have a guarantee that the generator will remain on site, so we at least know that it'll be there. It won't be yanked from underneath us. But unfortunately, yeah, we are going to incur a fairly significant price tag with that rental.
Hopefully with this month's expenditures will probably be down, and hopefully it'll kind of offset it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the other thing about this month is that we can see in the last 2 weeks, we've been under 2 severe weather situations, and both of those issues have had, you know, electric outages in the region. So it really does underscore the need to have this available for, you know, again, even at a significant price point, to have that backup available for the plant.
All right, thank you very much. If there's no other questions, I'm going to ask for a roll call by the Finance Director, please.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you very much. Next is reports from our appointed officials and council members. I'm going to ask Mr. City Manager, do you want to go last, or would you rather go ahead and go now?
Well, as you and I discussed in preparation for the meeting, I do have a lengthy report. There are several items that I've been asked to either follow up on or feel are urgent to offer report. So if you want me to go last, I'm certainly willing to do that.
Sure, let's go ahead and defer you to later. Let's go to the Finance Director. Mr. Duke, anything for us tonight?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Smith. So we have, and the city manager may get into this a little bit later today, but we have been trying to evaluate what some of the impacts to the city's finances will be from the COVID-19 issues. We have, in my monthly report that I provided to council last week, I addressed some of that and some of the projections, trying to figure out how it may impact us. We've since gotten a little bit more information. We've been in conversations with Rita, who collects for people across the state. They're projecting basically a 20% reduction in revenue for several months, I think 3 months, and then they're projecting another 10% for 2 months, and then 5% for another month. That's overall impact, not far different from what I had projected in the report. I think I did 40% for 2 months. So it's just the time frame that's a little different there. Overall, the actual financial impact's not far different, but there are a lot of assumptions built into that. And so I'd be very cautious in saying that that's actually how it will end up impacting us in the city finances. We'll probably have a better idea come September, maybe even October, what the actual impact will have been. We'll be able to tell a lot of that from the withholding that we're receiving on a monthly basis. But we are monitoring that. It will undoubtedly have a significant impact on the city's finances. We already had kind of an anomaly this year with the 27th pay. And so some reduced revenue here is gonna have a significant impact. We were off to a great start for the first 3 months, up 11% in income tax collections. And so we might have a little bit of a buffer in that we were ahead of where we had projected through those first few months. But we'll certainly have to have some more in-depth conversations with council in the near future on what this means for us financially. Also, I had mentioned that we were looking at, from an income tax perspective, how to continue to provide service. Our income tax department will continue to prepare returns, even though we aren't providing service in person. Income tax returns we would accept via email or in the Dropbox or U.S. Postal Service. We'll actually prepare the return, mail it back, email it back to the individual for their signature, and then they can ultimately file that return. So we're trying our best to continue to provide similar services, and we can do that either electronically or through the mail. So we're continuing to do that. We've also ensured that we've complied from the governor with the governor's orders as it relates to disconnects with public safety, and we believe that all of the active accounts are now connected. We don't have anybody who's disconnected that actually signed in for service. So we're compliant there. There may be, again, some impacts to the city's water sewer funds from that. I'm sure we're going to have some landlords who are unhappy that their tenants have run up some fairly large bills and have not been required to pay. But at this point, our hands are tied, and we've got to comply with the governor's order. So everybody's connected at the moment, and we'll continue to monitor how that impacts our water sewer funds moving forward. And that's all I've got.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Finance Director, and appreciate the job you're doing. Madam Law Director, do you have anything tonight that you would like to add?
Just briefly, continue to work with Brent and Ryan on the issues that are affecting the city, and continue to work with the OMA on issues that are affecting all cities. Suggesting legislation, trying to get the state to pitch in some funding. Don't know that that's going to happen, but the OMA is pushing that as well. Continue to work from home, just try to build some redundancy into the law department. If my prosecutor would get sick, I need to be able to go in and cover for him. So we are operating, but at reduced staffing. And I'm very happy to see you all tonight, see that you're all healthy. Stay home, stay safe, take care of your families.
All right, thank you, Madam Law Director. Mayor Mays, what would you like to add tonight?
Been a very quiet schedule for me, so not a lot to add. Just want to remind people for Easter weekend, a lot of churches are doing online services. Some churches, like ours, are doing a drive-in service at the YMCA parking lot. You can come in and stay in your car. That's kind of been the running line. Come as you are, stay in your car. So I hope people have the opportunity to still celebrate Easter and all that it means to people who hold that belief. So thank you and stay safe.
Thank you, Mayor Mays. We appreciate everything you're doing. Councilwoman Dean, would you like to add anything tonight?
Actually, yes. Cody, Councilman Brannon reminded me about a really cool event that happened in our community. Kelly, who is a trainer at Snap Fitness here in Xenia, and I think a couple other people put together a GoFundMe for Snap Fitness. I know this whole situation has really hit our local businesses really, really hard. So it was really cool to see everybody come together. It's my own personal gym, and Kelly's there. She teaches classes, really great classes to go to. So I wanted to give like a shout out and just say that's really cool that despite everything going on, we see stuff like this happen. So that's about all.
All right, thank you very much. I did see that on social media. That was very kind. And you know, at this time and venture in this crisis, kindness is really appreciated.
Sure.
And speaking as a small business owner, this could not have come at a worse time for a lot of businesses, as they were just coming out of a slower winter to get that spring sales, that spring volume that never really materialized. So yeah, it's definitely affecting the small businesses. So continue to keep them in your prayers and support the businesses that are open at this time if we can. So thank you for your comments. Councilman Branham, would you like to add anything for tonight?
Yeah, I just want to wish everybody a happy Easter this weekend. Also, I want to say from Planning and Zoning Committee this past week, we did approve a nice little, hopefully, growth opportunity. I just want to remind all of Xenia that sometimes it does take time, so don't freak out if it doesn't show up right away. But we are possibly getting a skyline and a Butterbees, which I say possibly because you never know, things can happen, economy, that kind of thing. So, but it did get approved through planning and zoning, and I want to thank all of my members on planning and zoning that did a Zoom call last week. It worked out great, and thanks a lot to them. And also, real quick, we lost a staple that was part of our community with a lot of different ways, Mr. Sheridan. And just want to pass my condolences off to that family. I know that they're from Cedarville, but they were very still active in the Xenia community.
All right, thank you very much, Councilman Branham. Appreciate the work you're doing with planning and zoning. Councilman Dean, would you like to add anything for tonight?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing to add tonight.
All right, thank you, Councilman Dean. Councilman Scrivens.
Mr. President, thank you. Just like to wish everybody a happy Easter and to remember what the reason is for the season. And the devil's at work, but love is go triumph over the COVID virus. Wanted to hear what the city manager has to say about the community gardens. That's been a subject of discussion here for a couple of weeks. Like to also give my heartfelt condolences to the family of Mr. Carl E. Johnson, Jr. We called him Punkin. He was a class of 64 at Xenia High School. He lived in Detroit, and he passed away just recently of the COVID-19. And also had a friend in Indianapolis, Miss Mary B.B. Glass. She had come here this summer for East High School reunion, her and her husband, and they both had contracted the virus. She passed on. And he is just coming out of the ICU, I'm told. So praying for those families. And then also the family, Keith Sheridan, as Cody said, he was a paragon in the real estate business here in Xenia. And I saw him at the nursing home just before he went bad. And he was still in good spirits. So with that, Mr. President, I thank you very much. And everybody in Xenia, stay strong, be patient. This too shall pass. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Scrivens. Vice President Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to just echo the sentiments that Councilman Scrivens just made regarding Happy Easter, and that we too are using the option to do online services. Last week, for the first time, I did a Facebook message, and we're thanking all of those people who are doing everything that they can to keep the city open, the services provided, and we have prayers and best wishes for families throughout the world during this COVID-19 crisis. And I do want to encourage folks to do the social distancing, the masks, face masks, gloves, hand washing, and all the rest, so that we can minimize the numbers of lost and hurt and sick. But thank everybody for the work that they're doing.
Thank you, Vice President Wallace. I'm going to turn this back over to our city manager.
Thank you, sir. I do have a number of items to report on this evening, and so please bear with me. I apologize if I get a little verbose. Just want to be comprehensive. First, I want to start with a little discussion on the community garden program. I know there's been some communication with council members via email on this, and I was asked to do a brief report this evening just to kind of provide an overview of what we're doing and why. So the community garden program was a program that we had many years ago. When I became city manager, we reinstituted the program, and it was located out adjacent to our service center complex out next to the Westside Park. To give you some perspective on participation, in 2019, we had 50 spots available. 31 of those were rented by 22 individuals. Those numbers were down from 38 rented spots by 24 gardeners the year before. And last year marked the third straight year of declining numbers with the program, unfortunately. While still popular among a core group, the program obviously has seen limited participation. And, we, of course, want to continue the program. But something unique has come up. The core reason that we're looking at moving the program to Lexington Park is really pretty simple. From August till about mid-October every year, the WeBucks football program utilizes Westside Park for daily football practices for youth teams. Youth that participate are from 3rd to 6th grades. There are a couple teams per grade generally. This past year, they had the largest participation they've ever had. WeBucks is certainly one of the largest youth sports groups in Xenia, and somewhat unique to WeBucks and really encouraged by their organization is the presence of family as spectators for their practices. This means that on any given summer evening or early fall evening, Westside Park will host several hundred cars, certainly probably we guess 400 plus individuals at the park to accommodate all of those practices. And truthfully, the facility at Westside Park is really not ideal for WeBucks. We do not have the parking, but they found no alternative site that really meets their needs for both the acreage as well as the storage that they utilize with the utility shed that we have out there that also doubles as a concession stand. Over the past two summers, we've been fielding increasing complaints from the general public, specifically from folks in the neighboring neighborhood, with regard to all the cars that are parked. And again, on any given night, there are dozens of cars that are parked just off the road in a zone that was approved by ordinance to be a no parking zone. And this has created really a problem, not only because it's in violation of the parking ordinance, but also because we have a lot of kids that are crossing that roadway. It's 35 miles per hour through that zone. So we have a lot of kids and even adults crossing back and forth through the course of the evening over that roadway. Because of the way the cars are parked, they're ducking in and out of cars. And so we felt that we needed to find a solution to this. We worked with WeBucks, our public service staff and police division, met with their folks, their leadership, trying to come up with a solution. The best solution we could come up with, and this is not a complete solution, I will admit that right off, was to take that garden space and convert that to some temporary seasonal parking so that we could at least get those cars off of the direct roadway parking along the side of the road. Were it not for that need, we probably would not have altered this program. But again, trying to accommodate a program that has hundreds of participants, and given that the safety of youth and compliance with our local ordinance were priorities, we felt that this was appropriate. We moved the location of the community garden to Lexington Park. This made perfect sense. One, because there is currently plenty of space there. Two, it also paired very nicely. We have a program with the Ohio State, Greene County extension of the Ohio State University, and they have a community garden program that they do at Lexington Park. So it made perfect sense to partner and pair these programs together at Lexington Park. We already had water service installed at Lexington Park, so that was available. So all things considered, the relocation made sense to us and didn't cost us any additional for infrastructure. And we were able to support a program with the OSU extension there at Lexington Park. I know that change is difficult for some folks. We did have a couple of by a couple, I think it was one particular family that raised some concerns and asked that the program not be moved. As I've indicated to council, unless the council offers a directive otherwise, my intention is to keep the change in place for the reasons that I've outlined. And some of the other concerns that were listed were safety concerns at Lexington Park. I'll be honest, I really reject that. By design, the more we have folks in our parks, the more they're using them, the safer they are. It's when parks are not used that they become potential locations where you see unsavory activity. And so, I would really encourage the citizens of Xenia to take their parks back, to be in the parks and help police the parks and have an active buy-in and presence in the park. So I think we sort of reject that safety issue. It's no different at Lexington Park than being at the very remote location that Westside Park is. So all things considered, we would not have moved the program if we didn't feel it necessary to accommodate the bigger picture need. and that's the direction we're moving in. Are there any questions or concerns with this particular item? Okay. I wanted to move on and touch on another topic that I know has been a point of interest for council. That is the issue of Bridges of Hope. In the midst of this COVID-19 situation, the assistant city manager and I want to thank Jared for his efforts with this, have been in regular communication with leadership from Bridges of Hope. As the governor's pointed out a couple times in his press conferences, homeless individuals in our state present a particular concern and vulnerability related to COVID-19. They are a highly at-risk population due to their overall situation. And so lack of attention with our homeless population can really create a point of acceleration for the spread of COVID-19. As Mr. Urschel, former Councilman Urschel, in his presentation to council early this year suggested, they are looking for funding to try to get their operation open on a 24-hour basis and extend the season into the spring and summer this year. They have pursued numerous other alternatives for funding, both state and federal dollars, regional charitable funding, Dayton Foundation, for example, looking at resources to help cover their operating and capital costs. I think it's important to point out that the reason they're facing some operating challenges right now is that due to the COVID-19, their volunteer corps has evaporated. Volunteers that felt that it was unsafe to be out and they're trying to comply with the governor's orders. So they had a very reliable volunteer corps that has now evaporated. And so in order for them to be able to sustain services and reopen services, they're looking at the need to have some expansion of their operating expense to have some paid staff there. They have sent, I think, all of the council members at least one correspondence, if not two, and are looking for any assistance that the city is willing to offer and provide to sort of count as some seed money and a match for some other grant dollars that they're seeking. I would suggest that I think the council does need to offer some general direction to the staff in terms of what you would like us to do. If you would like us to move forward in preparation of legislation to offer some funding, we can certainly do that and facilitate it for your next meeting. I think to that point, if you're interested, what I would suggest is that you utilize revenue sharing grant dollars that the county gave the city at the start of this year. So the city was granted $40,000 from Greene County. I should add that the mayor and I have been in touch with the county administrator and at least one commissioner raising this issue, suggesting that the homelessness issue and Bridges of Hope is a county level service. It's not merely a Xenia service and therefore should not fall on the backs of just Xenians. I don't know if they necessarily rejected that, but it was pretty clear, I think, to us, and the mayor, I think, would corroborate that I don't see any funding coming from the county in the near term. But the county did suggest to me that they felt that the use of these grant dollars to help fund Bridges of Hope would certainly be an acceptable use of those dollars from their perspective. So I would open it up for any discussion. Again, I think we don't need any official action. We're looking for some direction from the council because we're getting questions back from Bridges of Hope.
All right, thank you very much. Before we discuss Bridges of Hope, did you have anything else, Mr. City Manager? You want to speak on the COVID-19?
Yeah, do you want me to do that now or?
No, we can go ahead and do the Bridges of Hope discussion. Does anyone have any comments or questions? I certainly have a comment or two. I don't want to take up all the time, but does anyone else have any questions? I know, Mayor, you've been in contact with former Councilman Urschel as well as I have.
I've also been in contact, just to give a little more context, I've been in contact this weekend last with Sandra Brazington, who's our liaison to the governor's office, and also started a conversation with Sam Bain from Senator Portman's office. One of the challenges that Bridges of Hope is facing right now, specifically, is we're part of 15 under HUD, and there is money allocated, but it only goes to certain shelters. And unfortunately, because Bridges of Hope is the only adult drop-in shelter in Greene County, but with it being faith-based, it's not recognized under Ohio. So some of that normal funding is not coming in. They do have vouchers through next week for the hotel, but there's the discussion right now is with the governor's office and with Senator Portman's office, if some of that can be changed and we can qualify for that Region 15, I say that Bridges of Hope can be qualify for that Region 15 funding that is out there, but that's a slow process. And that's part of the challenge that they're facing. Again, and when I talked to Marlene, their biggest challenge really is finding staff. They don't have the volunteers because you can't. So.
Mr. President, if I could just add to one thing I neglected to state was that Bridges of Hope has been able to secure funding or direct vouchers to take some of their clients and put them up in some area hotels. Some of those vouchers are expiring. They've got some extensions for some others, so they're able to, for a pretty significant portion of their clients, to keep them in some type of hotel facility for a number of additional days here. But within the next week or so, pretty much all those vouchers are going to run out. And I think the desire is to try to have some place for these folks to go. Again, the council is going to have to decide what you want the policy to be on this issue. I would just add that my concern is that if there is not a place for these folks to have some kind of congregant facility, we do face some public health risk by having these folks potentially locate in areas downtown or otherwise where there are no sanitary conditions. We don't have restrooms. We don't have a water service, and that does potentially present a public health concern for our community. So again, I think the council is going to have to kick around what, if anything, you want to do, but there is a limited amount of time here with regard to those vouchers that are available.
Thank you.
With vouchers, though, the other issue is that if you are, quote, newly homeless and you weren't in Bridges of Hope before the vouchers came in, you don't have anything. So I know in our own church, we have had some people who have come in and said, I'm homeless, I have nowhere to go. And normally we would ask them to go to the shelter, and the answer that they're getting is there's no shelter, and they don't qualify for a voucher because they were not a guest or a client before the shutdown. So the vouchers have been very helpful, but it does not extend beyond who's already there.
Yeah, just one other thing to add in relation to what the mayor said. Another component that is very unpredictable right now, you have the governor and other administrators of corrections facilities or local jails who are looking at early release of prisoners. This is happening locally as well as at the state level. One of the concerns I think that's out there is what happens to these individuals if they don't have family or somewhere to go. Yeah, you're relieving the problem for the state or for the county sheriff, for example, but you're creating another problem if these folks don't have a place to go. And so that's another concern that's really beyond our control, but something that, whether we like it or not, has the potential to affect us here because of the Greene County Jail.
Right. Well, I truly understand the gravity of the situation here, and it does not quite seem fair that because the shelter is located in our community, we're fronting the burden of the entire county. And I would ask our citizens to continue to address this concern to your county commissioners. And I know there's actually still an election in place through the end of April. A good question would be to ask those people that are running their stance on Bridges of Hope and a shelter in our county as a Bridges of Hope is providing that service. So my question to the city manager and law director, do we need to take any action tonight as a council, or can council give you enough direction that you can discuss this issue with the caretakers of Bridges of Hope?
I think what we were asking for tonight is we just want direction whether or not you want us to bring legislation back to you at the next meeting to authorize emergency funding for Bridges of Hope during the period of this pandemic.
Yeah, I would just add to what Danette said and say, we don't need specific action. To her point, we're looking for some direction. By basically concurring and tacitly directing us to prepare some legislation, you're not obligated to approve anything or even the terms of what we would bring forward. But what we would say is if you're inclined to do that, we do have some administrative work that we need to do in the way of appropriations ordinance and agenda report that it would make sense for us to have prepared. If you choose not to act on it, choose to vote it down, whatever you want to do, that's fine. But again, it really would, if you're inclined at all, would behoove the council to, to go ahead and have something prepared.
All right, thank
I
you.
understand, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
My understanding was that that there was going to be a figure mentioned that I don't think I've heard in this discussion, that it was not going to be necessarily a recommendation, but that it was going to be a figure mentioned that I think they had requested some $20,000 or something to that effect.
Mr. President, I can speak to that a little bit. We've been in a lot of communication, again, as assistant city manager and I know the mayor's actually been very involved as a liaison with the state and federal leaders. But the number that has been sort of bantied about is $20,000 would be in the ballpark of what would be beneficial for them. Again, not only for their operation, but I think they're also looking to submit some additional applications, and they're hoping to be able to say the city of Xenia is putting forward this amount as sort of as a match money for some of the other applications that they're being made. So again, I'm not saying that's what I'm recommending, but that's the 20,000 is the number that they have thrown out.
All right, thank you very much. So before we discuss this, if you put legislation together, you come back in 2 weeks, is that enough time? Does that give them enough time to act and salvage that project, or do they need those funds even quicker than 2 weeks?
Well, I think that's as fast as we can move. I think they would graciously accept those resources, whether it was tomorrow or in 2 weeks, and they would just adjust accordingly. As I said, most of their vouchers will expire between now and that point. Again, to me, we do need to take some steps in order to prepare the legislation and review that. So we do need that extra time to be able to to prepare that.
My understanding, Mr. President, is that they have identified some people, up to 3 people, I believe, that they could potentially hire if they had any idea that the money was coming and that they would have the matching funds for some of the grants that they're going after. And I would love to see us, if the council was so inclined, to make a commitment at least for that $20,000 as early as tonight, so that they would know that in 2 weeks, I mean, we still need the time to do the legislation and all of that, but if we at least expressed an interest or a willingness to help them, they would know that they had that help coming. And I know that, and I'm not saying that I'm ready to make a motion, but I am willing to say that I am all for helping Bridges of Hope with $20,000, and hopefully at least 5 of our colleagues or 4 of our colleagues will as well.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So, Mr. City Manager, if we would discuss a dollar figure tonight, would that throw a monkey wrench into the legislation, or is this something that we could certainly, if approved tonight, we can make some type of monetary commitment?
So if the council was so inclined to sort of come to a consensus on what you think you'd like to do, that would instruct us more specifically in terms of what to bring back. Short of some type of an emergency ordinance to appropriate the dollars, it really is not possible. Even if you said tonight in an administrative motion that that's what you want to do, we still could not make that available to them until there was an appropriation ordinance, because we do not have those funds appropriated. They have to be appropriated through an ordinance. So again, to put a bow on it, I think you could verbally make some type of suggestion of what your commitment would be, but that's not binding and not able to be delivered upon until after there's an action via an emergency ordinance.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So I'm understanding that we do not need to make a dollar commitment tonight, just some type of commitment for staff to move forward.
Mr. President.
Yes, I'm going to turn the floor over to my colleagues. Councilman Scrivens, go ahead.
I would be inclined to move with Dr. Wallace in that we'd have a sense of the council that we'd be inclined to make an appropriation to Bridges of Hope.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay.
Mr. President,
Yeah, yes, Councilman Dean, go ahead.
I have a question for the city manager. These grant dollars that the county gave us, is there any stipulations on what they have to or what they cannot be used for?
No, the county was pretty open. I think the instructions that we had last year was that they wanted to see the dollars go towards something that would add community and economic benefit, something that had a compounding value. Of course, last year the proceeds were used, as the finance director actually indicated earlier, were used toward a build out of our fiber network, which has obvious compounding value. Again, the mayor and I, in our dialogue with the county administrator and Commissioner Kugler, this issue of using those dollars came up, and at least with those two county officials, I would say gave a blessing that this was an acceptable use. Again, that the monies that were granted total $40,000. I'm reluctant to really say what I think you ought to give. I think this is really a policy decision the council needs to make. But the only thing I would caution is the city is not presently in a position that we can make an annual financial commitment to this operation. So I would just put that out there that perhaps if you're offering some assistance, that it's stipulated that this is intended to be a one-time sort of emergency assistance.
Councilman, I'm just for verification, I pulled up my email, and it is an email from Commissioner Kugler dated March 18th that specifically references that that he encouraged the city to use part of that 40,000 towards the Bridges of Hope, that the county was not able to be a part of that, but that the city could use some of that money, to consider using some of that money. So under the email documentation I have, it was very, very clearly stated that it would be appropriate to use it for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Mays. Any other comments or questions tonight?
Council President.
Yes, Councilman Brannon.
Yeah, for me, I feel like that $40,000 would be better utilized at Shawnee Park. Start with the next phase. It's time for the rest of the cities that are within Greene County step up to the plate, regardless whether they say they can't. Xenia can't fund this thing for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, Mr. President, could I just add in response to that? Certainly, I wouldn't disagree with the need for all of Greene County's jurisdictions to participate in funding a solution to the homelessness issue. For those of you who are familiar with the homelessness issue broadly, when we talk about it being a local issue, it is not a Xenia issue. It is a regional issue. And when we say local, it's at the county level that it's a local issue. And we see that because of the transient nature of the population that we're talking about. They are from all over Greene County. So I absolutely agree with Councilman Branham. To that effect, I've reached out to my colleagues, city managers, administrators in Greene County. As you would expect, they don't have the ability or desire. I think it's fair to also offer that Fairborn is dealing with a very similar dynamic as Xenia, and I wouldn't necessarily expect them to provide resources to Xenia when they have a very legitimate concern in their community. But I think Councilman Branham's core point that this is a county issue and be nice for other jurisdictions to participate should be well heeded.
Thank you very much.
I would say that under normal circumstances, I would completely agree as well. And I've actually talked to several of the other mayors about this and received very similar responses of not overly desirous to be a part of it. I do think that these particular circumstances are unique in that I would agree with the city manager that a one-time gift is very different than annual funding. So for me, where I'm standing right now, a one-time gift in light of the current circumstances of making sure our homeless guests are not stranded during a health crisis would be my only pushback. But I understand what you're saying, Councilman.
I certainly understand too, Mr. President, what Councilman Branham is saying, and I would absolutely agree with the mayor that we would encourage participation from every other jurisdiction with the possible exception of Fairborn. But the bottom line is Bridges of Hope runs out of funding to keep these folks in hotels through next week. And they'll be back on the streets and they will not be doing social distancing. But if they are at Bridges of Hope, their social distancing can be accomplished as well as a safe place for them to be that will not put other people at risk. And that's what I would like to see accomplished. That's why I am ready to make a commitment and hopefully get at least 3 others of you to make a commitment to them as well. Now, I know there are logistical problems in getting the help approved. We're only talking about one time, so we can't support them from now on. At this point, tonight, we're talking about a one-time gift of half of that $20,000, $40,000 in the amount of probably $20,000. And the other 20 can be used for Shawnee Park or whatever else we choose to use it for. But I think it's an absolutely viable need and use of those funds that we currently have. And it will help them to compound that and leverage that money into significantly more. And I believe that we desperately need to give them a sense that we're going to support them.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. You know, certainly on the news today, we're seeing longer lines for public assistance, for food pantries, for help. You know, people are hurting right now. This is just a crisis of huge proportion. We've never had to deal with anything like this before. But we do have a need in our community. In my opinion, we do have a public health crisis with the homeless in our community. It does not seem fair that Xenia has to give up some of their money from the county for projects that we have to give it to a shelter in our community that actually helps the rest of the county. That's personally my feeling. However, the compassion in me feels at this time, at least for 30 days, at least until May 1st, we have to do something to keep the shelter and these people out of harm's way from the rest of the community. So I would be inclined myself to support a dollar figure of at least 20,000 as a one-time monetary donation because we cannot continue to sustain that shelter as a municipality, and it should not always be on our shoulders. But I think at this time, my opinion, we have no choice but to help them, because if they don't congregate in hotels or at Bridges of Hope, they're going to congregate at Speedway. They're going to be in the bathrooms. They're going to congregate at Walmart. They're going to be in the bathrooms. There's just nowhere for them to go. And I think personally, if we can help one time, then we do it this one time. But Bridges of Hope, they're going to have to figure out a solution going forward after this one-time donation, and so be it. It just has to happen. Any other comments on that?
I would just like to add that I kind of echo what Councilman Branham said earlier. That's all.
I would like to add that this isn't the first time the city stepped up to the plate either. The city's given them a very good deal on the facility out there. Yeah, it was kind of getting it off the city's back, but the land that came with it, and I believe the city's already provided a match too with the for the fire suppression system out there as well.
Well, for my 2 cents, I don't know where we got the number 20,000 from, but you know, I was looking at 10 or 15, but yeah, I definitely don't think we should have an ongoing concern with this. I mean, as Cody said, I mean, we gave them a sweetheart deal on the building, some of the upkeep, some of the lands that's surrounding it. I mean, they could make money with that.
Right.
So,
So,
all right.
so what I would propose is tonight, we do not have to commit to a dollar figure. Let them come to us in writing for that dollar figure. However, do we want to vote consensus to lead city staff to work with legislation to move forward with the one-time assistance? Do we need to have a vote on that?
No, sir, you do not. We just need direction. You couldn't commit to giving them any money without an appropriation because the money is not there to be committed.
Okay.
We did not feel as staff that it was right for us to prepare an emergency appropriation and bring that to you without you discuss it as council and instruct us whether or not that was something you were interested in doing. Any money to be given to them would have to be, there would have to be an emergency appropriation made because that 40,000 is in a different fund right now. 5,000, $1, the whole 40, 20, any amount of that would have to be moved through an emergency appropriation to be able to get that to them. I think the conversation of where you want to go moving forward with the funding, as we discussed amongst ourselves today, that is a conversation I think you need to have. I think this particular situation, there is the issue that we are in the middle of a pandemic. And if those people do not have somewhere to go, then they are around the community. So this one particular issue, it is definitely a public safety issue for our whole city.
Thank you very much. So I guess I'm not sure, but I guess, can we call the question that we should move forward with legislation? Would anyone like to make that motion?
I would move, Mr. President.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Vice President.
I would move that the staff prepare legislation for one-time funding, and that they bring that back to us. And since that would be all that I would ask at this point, and we're not talking about that dollar amount, but we're talking about one-time funding for this emergency situation to address the pandemic in which we find ourselves located.
All right, thank you very much. So I have a motion by Vice President Wallace for prepare legislation for one-time funding. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Mayor Mays. Any other discussion on this?
in that legislative language, we should stipulate clearly that it's a one-time contribution.
All right, thank you very much.
That's
Councilman
actually a motion, Mrs. Scrivens.
I will make sure that gets added as a whereas clause, Councilman Scrivens.
I didn't understand that. Would you repeat?
She said that she would add that as a whereas, so it's a specific condition of the approval. Also add that whatever we bring back, I mean, if we put $2 or $20,000 in there, it's still subject to amendment by council. You can amend that to be whatever you want it to be.
Thank you very much. We spent quite a bit of time on this, so I know we have some other things to discuss. So I'm going to go ahead and ask for a roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Nay.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. All right, and then last, excuse me, City Manager, you like to finish up with some more discussion?
Yeah, I again hate to extend the meeting, but I just feel it's imperative to provide an update to council and to our viewing audience on a couple of additional matters, and really they're connected, and it's really just a response to the COVID-19. So I just want to give a general update on where we're at with that. So as I think everyone is aware at this juncture, The governor has essentially, through the Ohio Department of Health, through the director, extended the stay-at-home order up until May 1st. This includes a significant shuttering of a lot of non-essential businesses, and it keeps in place the social distancing requirements and other protective measures that are supposed to be taken by essential functions of which the city is considered a part of that. In compliance with that, or in conjunction with that, we have extended local orders here, keeping special events in a canceled status through April. We have extended the closure of our city facilities through April 30th as well. That does include amenities at parks, and I just want to spend a second on this. This is not really my decision. This has already been mandated through the state's orders. But playground equipment, basketball courts, things of that nature where there is contact and within close proximity, those are supposed to be closed at our parks. I'll just say for the record, I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that, because I think we're putting our parents and our kids in a difficult position, given that they're out of school. But the ruling is what it is. And so we have posted at our playground equipment, for example, that those amenities are closed. Now, that does not mean that parks are closed. You can still use the trails and the bike trails and walking trails and parks and so forth, and we encourage people to do that. But again, the rest of those amenities are shuttered for the time being through April 30th. We are maintaining our public safety staff. We are not altering those services. We do have contingency staffing plans that we're prepared to implement if we need to. But those services for public safety remain active and consistent as we normally would. We are continuing, though, some of the reductions in services in other areas. Our administrative services, of course, the business of our administration building is closed to the public through April 30th, and staff can be reached by email and by phone for questions, concerns, issues related to our programs and services. Our public services also under a reduced schedule as well. We are focusing our efforts there, maintaining roadways, maintaining right-of-way, grass and such to the best extent that we can. But we are pulling back in some of those service areas, again, to be consistent with some of the orders from the health department. I want to point out that we are concerned about our community. We're concerned about the needs in our community. And so we have initiated a series of video meetings with Zoom, such as we're doing here this evening, with various stakeholders in our community. We held the first one today, and we had participated with us representatives from Kettering Health, from the Melissa, the county health department director, Alan from the Chamber of Commerce, a number of our staff members, a few others. Had invited the schools. Unfortunately, they were not able to participate apparently, but the need was to understand, what's going on at the ground level. So we had a great report from the health director, a great report from Kettering Health Network. What we're really seeing locally is a reflection of the state, where the total number of cases have in terms of the daily increase, the number of hospitalizations and the number of deaths are leveling out and trending much lower than the modeling had suggested, which, if you listen to the governor today, is a direct result of the social distancing and other policies in place. But I think a reasonable person would ask how long can we maintain that. So the governor did address that a little bit today and indicated that they are putting together a sort of a plan that would step by step re-engage various aspects of our economy and business community. And I think he suggested as early as next week they'll begin to promote what that looks like. I think here locally, we are very, very concerned about the economic effects to our community, concerned about the financial implications for our families in Xenia. So another goal of these meetings that we're hosting locally will be reaching out to our faith community and our social service providers to engage in dialogue about how we identify needs and deficiencies in our community and how do we meet those needs. We want to make sure that that our kids and our elderly and our families are taken care of to the best of our ability. And it's one of the special things about Xenia, the fact that as a community, we really do rise to these challenges. We care for one another. We give of ourselves to make sure that the least of these have at least the core needs met. So again, there are a lot of individual efforts that are out there, and we're hoping to bring some structure to that if possible and just help supplement wherever we can to make sure that folks who are suffering and who I think will continue to suffer at a greater extent as this current shutdown continues, that we're doing the best we can to meet some of their core needs. So we're working on that. We also continue to reach out to our business community. We've got a great online resource for businesses to be able to link to information on state and federal programs for business continuity, forgivable loan, payroll protection program, the EIDL legislation. There are a whole host of things that have been created at state and federal level to provide assistance, and we're doing everything we can to link our businesses with those. One of the steps that we've taken, a couple of our local businesses do have some loans through the city, and so we've taken some action to put those loans in deferment for 120 days to give them some breathing room. So again, just trying to do what we can do to support our local business community. I could go on and on about this. We're spending probably 90% of our time dealing with legislative issues, service delivery issues, public health issues, just a myriad of concerns related to this crisis. And unfortunately, I feel right now that we've only scratched the surface, because I think the longer term, the next wave of suffering is going to be the financial suffering that's being created because of the economic shutdown. And to the finance director's point earlier, we've been engaged in some very maybe painful but important and necessary conversation as we look to determine what kind of impact we might have here locally. So we've already begun taking steps to reduce spending. We have a couple of public safety positions that were already in the hiring process, and I've authorized those to continue. But beyond that, for my staff, I've said we're going to keep any other vacancies open. We've canceled travel and training. We've instructed departments to reduce expenditures. Again, we're not even sure what we need to shoot for in the way of reduction at this point, but we know that that is coming and that we need to take responsible steps today to be able to absorb that hit when it comes. Now, we're still confident that the other economic conditions around us are still very strong. And if you remove this COVID-19 issue, we feel like nationally and locally, we're set to bounce back. And I think the president's really promoting that. And I think the reality is it can happen. So we're looking at, we feel right now, probably a 2-year blip. We need to plan for the next 2 budget cycles that we're going to have to take a hit, a reduction in resources, and find a way to continue providing core operations without reducing staffing. So again, we can't prescribe the solution yet because we don't know the full nature of the problem, but I want to give the council a sense of confidence as well as the community that we're beginning to look at these things. We're reducing expenditures and totally aware that we're going to need to find a way to suffer through this economic downturn. And I'll just end by saying we continue to see a lot of really positive examples of kindness and caring and compassion and love in our community. Councilwoman Dean mentioned one particular example. We've been promoting some of them on our social media, and we've been trying to participate in helping lift up local businesses and local opportunities where people are giving back to help one another out. That's just tremendously inspiring, and it's part of the reason I think we all like or really love to live in this community. It's because it's a compassionate, caring community, and even in the worst of times, we see folks stepping up to take care of one another. So we'll continue to keep council updated on all of these issues as we continue this response. And I will just say, I think we're going to obviously see this shutdown and this level of slowdown through the end of April. My guess right now, given what the governor's been indicating, it's going to extend to some extent or another well into May as they begin to ramp up reopening of business and amenities and services and sports and so forth. But I think it's weeks to months before there's some sense of normalcy that returns. One other thing I want to add before I end this long-winded dissertation here, one policy decision that we have made is that we are announcing that the severe weather shelter that folks historically have seen available at the Public Service Center is not available, and we'll be promoting that. We have struggled for years with trying to maintain that shelter service in inclement weather, but given the COVID-19 issue right now, we are totally incapable of providing that service because we are at a minimum staffing scenario. And if we have those folks housed together, we have no personal protective equipment. We have no ability to safely harbor people at that facility. So again, that facility will not be available in the case of an emergency, and we will make that abundantly aware to the public. So again, if there are no questions on those items, I have nothing further this evening.
All right. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. On behalf of the entire council, I can certainly thank you for you and the rest of our city staff for the job that you're doing during this difficult time. Certainly nobody really saw this coming, and it's made a major impact. So I would encourage everyone to stay strong through this. Stay 6 feet apart, and maintain that social distancing. And again, to be kind to our fellow neighbors and citizens. So with that, I would like to ask if anyone would like to make the motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
I can do that.
Okay, I got Mayor Mays, and do we have a second?
I guess we'll be here for a while.
Second by Councilman Scrivens. It's hard to hear, I'm sorry. But, okay, and as we do the roll call, again, everyone, thank you for watching tonight. And city will do the best job they can to keep everybody abreast of our current situation. Mr. Finance Director, roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean,
Aye.
Councilman Branham,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Mays,
Aye.
President Smith.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Good night, Xenia.